Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. And thank you for joining this learning experience brought to you by AWS. My name is Cody, and welcome back to Techstrong Learning. Before we dive into things, I do have just a couple of notes I'd like to review with everyone. First off, we are recording our panel session today. So if you have to leave early, if you'd like to watch again, or if you'd like to share this with your team, you will be receiving an email with a link to access this recording on demand. And you'll also find it living on the Cloud Native Now website, but more details to come on that later. So if you'd like to get engaged with us, get involved, there are a couple of ways to do so. The first way is to use the chat tab on the right side of your screen. So when you find that function, let us know from where in the world you are joining from today. Now, if you have any questions, we would like you to direct those to the Q&A tab on the right side of that chat panel. Sending in your questions just helps us keep track of all of your questions, and we'd like to make sure we address as many as we can. So be sure to send them into that Q&A box for us. Finally, we will be selecting two of our most engaged attendees today. So that's those who sent in chats, Q&As, and of course, filling out our post-webinar survey. We'll be selecting two lucky winners to win a $50 Amazon gift card. So be sure to let us know your thoughts, your questions, and of course, fill out that survey. So today's topic is mainframe modernization and generative AI. Are we there yet? Today, I'm joined by Bjorn Langmack, Principal Global Mainframe Modernization and Migration Leader at Deloitte Consulting. We're also joined by Stefan Albach, Senior Manager of Application Modernization and Migration for the Innovation Lab at Deloitte Consulting. We're also joined by Vipin Gupta, Partner Solutions Architect for Mainframe Modernization at AWS. And last but absolutely not least, we have Rajitha Girijadevi, Partner Development Manager for Mainframe Modernization at AWS. So I'd like to thank our entire panel for joining us today. I know we have a lot in store. Bjorn, would you like to open it up so we can just dive right in?
Absolutely, Cody, and thank you very much for having us. Talking about mainframe modernization is exactly our passion and what we are really happy to do, because it's what we do for life on a day-to-day basis. So are mainframes still the topic is usually the first question I get, because I remember in the last century, mainframe and mainframe applications were already declared dead, but they are still around. And most of the financial transactions are still being processed in the backend by mainframe systems. So therefore, they are more relevant than ever. But they are enterprise servers. So they are really quick systems, no doubt about this. So therefore, it's less about modernizing or migrating mainframes. It's all about the applications running on the mainframe, and especially those which were being written decades ago in languages like COBOL or PL1 or assembler. And they were written in a monolithic way, so it's really hard to maintain them. Back then, the people maintaining them were called system engineers, not just developer, because they had to have the system knowledge in mind. And therefore, as they are less and less available in the market, the need to modernize and to migrate those things or those applications is more important than ever. So long story short, yes, this topic is a relevant topic, and the amount of attendees and welcome y'all to this call shows that this is what a lot of people have on top of their mind. As you mentioned, Cody, I'm leading Deloitte's mainframe application modernization practice globally. And this means we are delivering those projects and helping our clients globally to accomplish their objectives by moving the applications and the workloads into the cloud. And with this, I would ask you, Rajitha, what's your AWS perspective on mainframes and the importance of them?
Thank you, Bjorn. Yes, happy to. I'm Rajitha. I'm a partner development manager with AWS for mainframe migrations and modernizations. My specialty is driving initiatives aimed at scaling mainframe migrations to AWS. And Bjorn, you asked me about AWS perspective on the mainframe. I think everyone who joined this call and listening us right now, they know that mainframe continue to play a crucial role in various industries and organizations that are running mission critical workload for our customers. What they also know is majority of them, or if not all of these mainframe shops are already due to the various challenges that range from resource constraints to technological limitations within the mainframe platform. And many of these organizations are exploring ways on how they can bring the applications that are currently running in the mainframe to the cloud so that they can address the existing challenges and at the same time leverage the capabilities provided by AWS. Beyond, how is Deloitte supporting its clients to move from mainframe to cloud?
Oh, happy to answer this question. The answer is it depends. Like all the consulting answers usually start with it depends. And we define or we see that there are three common patterns in the market. If you really want to accomplish this move of workload of applications into the cloud in a low risk approach. The first one is the lift and shift approach, the call it rehosting, refactoring one-to-one, where you take the application and all the functionality as is into the cloud, onto a modern stack, but function-wise and from a behavioral perspective, the application doesn't change. This is usually the way to proceed when time is of essence, when it is more about getting off the mainframe, and and there are several reasons why this be the case. So, for example, when the amount of staff or of system developers are decreasing in a way that the risk of just leaving it on the mainframe is too high. The other way to move into the cloud is the modernization way, to go iteratively. We call this business-led, based on the business priorities, into the cloud in an iterative process. Or last but not least, to understand what's going on the mainframe and go into off-the-shelf software. And this is the third pathway or disposition option which we identify. Which one is the right one depends on the discovery. So once we have done the discovery, it is very easy to define the right pathway based on the technologies and the objectives to be achieved. But regardless of the journey, isn't it right, Rajita, that AWS Mainframe Modernization Services Framework is the right place to go to?
Oh, yes. And with AWS, you can use our platforms to leverage the latest technologies to experiment and also innovate very quickly. And we are constantly bringing the new capabilities in the market to the customers so that they can transform their business. And like you pointed out, the various patterns that exist and then the use cases for the customers on this modernization journey, we have AWS Mainframe Modernization Service to help customers to migrate their on-premise uh, mainframe workload to a managed runtime environment on AWS. And it caters to mainframe modernization journeys for all the customers. So if the customer want to start their modernization journey for a complete workload, the service provides tools, automated refactoring and replatforming are options for them. And if they have not made a decision yet and then they are still thinking on their mainframe modernization strategy but would like to explore or unleash the potential of the data that is sitting on the mainframe, we have the tools like the data augmentation and replication and integration that is available in the mainframe modernization service. Also, to accelerate this, one of the common problems that we see in this, right, is testing is a longer cycle, right? To accelerate engineering release cycles and minimize the non-regression, shift left testing is also available in mainframe modernization service. So if you look at it, mainframe modernization service provides the development, build, and test tools that are needed for modernization projects. Now, say now the workloads are already in the cloud, right? So the obvious question that come to us is like, what's next, and what are we going to do to meet that ongoing customer demand for further modernization on the cloud? And if you are following the announcements at reInvent of 2023, we announced around like 11 new cloud-based services. And one of them that I want to mention in the mainframe perspective is Amazon RDS for DB2. That's a fully managed DB2 database engine which is running on AWS infrastructure. And customers' existing application will reconnect to RDS for DB2 without making any of the code changes. We were talking mainly on the mainframe modernization. Let's switch gears a bit and then talk a little bit about what we have for on the Gen AI side, right? Um, on the Gen AI, we have introduced capabilities like Amazon Bedrock and Amazon SageMaker, which are the easiest way to build and scale the Gen AI application with the foundational models. And the beauty of this is like no customer data is used to train the underlying models. And also, customers can fine tune models without having to annotate through the large volumes of data. And that saves like a ton of time. Now we have Amazon Code Whisperer, our AI code companion tool that generate the code suggestions like real time, and it can even scan the code and then show the hard vulnerabilities that exist in your code. And last but not least, we have Amazon Q. That's a generative AI powered assistant. It can have conversations, solve problems, generate content, insights, and also take actions if you are connected through your company's information. And speaking of Gen AI beyond, how does Gen AI fit into what Deloitte is doing for the mainframe modernization projects?
Thank you, Rachita. And now we are here exactly at the point where we are wanted to talk about not only mainframe migration modernization, but how can Gen AI enable this? And the first answer is probably a little bit frustrating for the Gen AI community because it is a differentiated answer. Based on the three disposition option I have explained in my last statement, if you look into into the first one, the refactoring, the lift and shift, the true story is it is already fully automated. Test cases are automated. So what should Gen AI help us to even accelerate if it's already 100% fully automated? So therefore, for the first way to just lift and shift workload, Gen AI doesn't play such a big role. But in the other two, it plays a big role. If you look into modernization of applications while moving it to cloud, we leverage Gen AI to have a better understanding of what's going on, to generate use cases. And Stefan will give us a demo later on about where you really see Gen AI at work in our tools by accomplishing this. The other part is if you want to move into an off-the-shelf solution, you want to have a very dedicated information about your application. And usually the documentation is lacking. At least if you look at documentation with today's mindset, a classical system engineer would look at you and say, hey, everything is documented in the code. And that's true. That's why we leverage Gen AI in our tools to get all of this information, the business rules, everything you need to move into the off-the-shelf solution safely and with a low risk. All of this we get out of the tool by leveraging Gen AI. Therefore, the answer is it depends on the disposition pathway. And as I mentioned, we will do a demo later today. Rachita, do you see similar patterns or is Gen AI all over the place?
Oh, yes, but the things that I'm seeing in the market, right, it's kind of a little bit all over the place as far as when it comes to any tool that works and whether it really have some Gen AI capabilities incorporated into that or not. I mean, I heard a customer saying like, we are using Gen AI to convert our COBOL code to Java and beyond. By now, you and I know that that's not as simple as that. There is like much more that you need to deal with specifically mainframe modernization projects, right? It's not about just converting program A to another language, and that's not it. If you have to understand how the application is architected, what the business rules are within the application, what is the future, right? Like what is the target architectural goals are, and what are you trying to do with data, like your data strategy, and then how are you going to test it, and so on and so forth. And depending upon the customer environment you are going in and then trying to solve their problem, there could be more and more things like the code situation that you mentioned before and things like that that gets added to it, right? So for instance, when you go to the code and then that deals with like IMS or datacom or IMS data, what do you do with it? And that's a question, right? There are so many anomalies like this that could come. And not only that, you can't just do this program by program because of the size of the mainframe application, right? These are large applications, and doing program by program is never a scalable way. It is not a sustainable way. So beyond, you have to have a way to automate these processes, right? Whether you are doing a refactor or a re-engineering project.
Absolutely. And that was exactly the way how we started 20 years ago by helping our clients to modernize and migrate off the mainframe. Back then, it was not on cloud, it was on-prem, but these days it's always exactly the same processes going into cloud, because we found out having not the high degree on automation is exactly how you set up your project to fail. And there were several projects where we stepped into a manual project to accelerate it by leveraging our tools to really help the client to get off the mainframe and then continue to modernize. And therefore, we do have automation starting from discovery through the one-to-one lift and shift, refactoring, rehosting, until the modernization. And even our mining is something which in former times people really have done manually. Now we accelerate this by leveraging our tools and Gen AI to do this in a highly automated fashion. And with this, I think, Vipin, it's time to you to introduce yourself and talk a little about the AWS Mainframe Modernization Service Framework, because from my perspective, isn't it true that you're supporting exactly the same approach?
Yeah, sure, Vion. I work with our partners to help our customers on their mainframe modernization journey. Definitely, the automation is the key. The automation is not only needed in the migration, but afterwards also while building an environment to run these modernized applications on AWS. Tool-based migration accelerate and de-risk the modernization of the mainframe workloads. Now, Rita initially mentioned about the AWS Mainframe Modernization Service. It's a unique platform which helps customers to migrate, modernize their workloads, as well as it provides a managed runtime environment on AWS where these modernized applications can run. It's a fully managed runtime which automate the provisioning of the resources, just like compute, middleware, caching, and provide you a right environment, an ideal environment to run these business critical application on AWS. So it provides you an environment to deploy these applications after the modernization.
And Vipin, how about deployment, and how does AWS help with deploying these applications into the cloud?
Right. So typically in the mainframe, you have different kind of environments. So you have a dev environment for developers to develop, enhance those existing applications. Then you have an environment where these development can be tested, a test environment. Then you have production environments. Typically, in mainframe, you have enterprise applications. And for running these applications, you need to have a production environment which is highly available. Right? Each environment has its own different SLAs and availability requirements. So when our partners work with the customers and modernize these workloads, for each project, you need to prepare these runtime environment. For production, you need to make sure that there's a high availability built in. So for any unforeseen scenarios, these applications can still run, and they need to set up the DRs too. Now, having a fully managed runtime can help on this part. So on AWS Mainframe Modernization Service, which you can access it through console or CLI, it can help you to build an environment with high availability. You go on the service and then you can select the number of instances, the type of instances, and based upon the environment and its high availability, you can deploy and create this environment on a single availability zone or multi availability zone with few clicks. So in place of taking days, you can do the creation of this environment in a few minutes. So in few minutes, you can create these pre-configured environment, and the applications which are modernized with, say Deloitte Innovate, you can run these application on the AWS. Now, once the application is being deployed, you can manage these applications, you can manage these environments, you can also get some insight from the stats. So the service provides you a way through which you can have a combined logging. The runtime environment itself comes with a built-in integration with CloudWatch. It provides you capability including role-based access, application level monitoring, and application deployment updates. So these application level monitoring complements the already available environment level matrices by adding engine level matrices. So with these logs, you can gather the information on the application, the transaction response time, how many transactions are running at a time, completed transaction count for enhanced application observability.
You talked about all these application level monitoring, observability, and all that, right? But don't we do something to help with the development as well?
Yes. So the service also allow you to leverage best practices of infrastructure as a code and DevOps via AWS Cloud Formation. When customer decide to modernize on AWS, they want to exit from the mainframe. One of the key driver is to have a DevOps capability. So with time, they would like to have more capability where developers can quickly enhance the application as per the business need and deploy on very quickly on these runtime environment. It benefits from a native integration with other AWS services too. So once you have modernized on AWS, you will still have access to other AWS services. You can have new channels created, and those new channels can integrate with these applications which are modernized on AWS. And then along with that, you can also have data analytics. You can have more insight on the data, and the business can modernize and augment these applications by offloading data processing too, right? So you can get a business insight intelligence with analytics, machine learning, and artificial intelligence on AWS cloud to speed further modernization and have more innovations. We have even added tooling such as AWS Cloud Whisperer to assist with the software development. I think Deloitte even has their own tool which plug directly into this environment. Beyond, do you want to talk about a little more on that one?
More than happy to do so. And you are spot on. It's not only that we have an experienced team helping the clients and knowing about mainframe and AWS and how to lift and shift them, but the core of our solution is our Innovate product suite. And we build and create and work on those products since over 20 years. And obviously, our product development team, which is focused on optimizing and accelerating those products, they are integrating new features, new frameworks, and now even Gen AI. What means even Gen AI is just another tool for our team to accelerate our product set to help the clients accomplishing their objectives even easier. And I've asked Stefan to join us today. Stefan, may you share with us the role you have in my team and a little bit share with us about the tooling and the approach for mainframe migration applications?
Yeah, I'm leading the innovation lab of our practice, and my team is focusing on the next generation of assets and solutions that can be applied to the application modernization domain. Generative AI has revolutionized software development, and it's providing huge benefits to developers for code assessment, drafting code, writing code, code correction, and system design. It has become a common tool for developers in the past year, both for creating as well as maintaining software.
Thanks, Stefan. But does this mean that Gen AI is not the silver bullet which automatically fixes everything just by asking it or using it?
Exactly. So Gen AI complements the capabilities that have been built into Innovate over the past 20 years. Our approach of application modernization was from the beginning relying on a high degree of automation end to end. And when I mean end to end, that means our tool is not only capable of covering the language translation from, let's say, COBOL, PL1, assembler, Fortran, whatever native language we're talking about, to modern Java or C#. But we have also the understanding and the capabilities for the technical environments that are found on IBM, Fujitsu, or Unisys mainframes. And we support the numerous subsystems for those systems as well, like CICS, IMS, RICF, IDMS, whatever. So that's the whole ecosystem that we're talking about. Up to now, understanding those legacy environments also required quite some understanding of the technical backgrounds. And we paired GenAI with our InnoWake suite, and this combination now democratizes access to the legacy application. And the power of this approach is caused by integrating GenAI into our modernization assets. So GenAI has not only access to the source code, but to all the insights that we have gathered during our mainframe discovery.
So, Stefan, you are exactly in the spot between GenAI with your deep knowledge about the modern stuff and all the legacy topics regarding mainframe and applications running on the mainframe. I ask you, will it be possible earlier or later that you just press the button and have GenAI modernizing a complex mainframe application into the cloud?
Yes, of course. That will be possible at some time with the help of generative AI. And that's what my team is working on. But I think your question is if generic LLMs can take this job over. And this is where I currently have my doubts. So large language models can be used to translate programming languages, as I said, COBOL to Java, for example. But and if you fine tune your models and train them better, your results will become better over time. But language transformation is only the tip of the iceberg.
Tip of the iceberg. It seems like everybody's focusing on the development language. I hear this all over, COBOL to Java. It's always about the development language. What are the real topics you're referring to?
Yeah, so especially on mainframes, there's a huge ecosystem of legacy technology, third-party tools, external systems, and so on. Furthermore, the functional behavior of an application has been buried below boilerplate code. The documentation is lacking. Routines have been copied and pasted over and over, and so on. And if you really want to go to cloud native and get rid of all these legacy dependencies, remove IMS, remove IDMS, Visa, translate RACF to your IAM solution, and still have want a maintainable code, you will still have to do a lot of manual work if you rely on LLMs only. So this is why we were combining the power of the existing highly automated approach with the power of LLMs, the knowledge bases like our Deloitte industry knowledge, our existing modernization assets to form a next generation GenAI native mainframe modernization solution.
Got it, Stefan. So that sounds to me that just sitting there and waiting for GenAI to come to do everything by moving it off is not the best approach and not a reliable one for sure. But let's change gears. I promised in the beginning of this session that we will demo a little bit of our GenAI included capabilities. Would you be so kind to take over and make a demo for us?
Yeah, before we switch to demo, let me quickly introduce what we're talking about. So the overall modernization tool is based by the centralized AI that we see here, which leverages the LLMs, which leverages our knowledge, and which has our AIs or our modernization specific tools really fully integrated. And if we look from a feature perspective, we see that our tools are capable of doing autonomous code understanding, document summarize, tagging, we have a semantic search capability, and much more. And the important thing is that we support bring your own model. That means if you want to leverage your own model within your software security boundaries, then we can also leverage this. So I've brought with me a quick demo about two aspects. The one thing is about autonomous code understanding. So, so this is what I want to show. Okay, can you see my screen? Okay, so we see the mining tool that is our bread and butter tool for diving into mainframe assessments, getting insights. And typically what we do here is we are trying to uncover the business functionality of an application. And this has been a lot of manual work previously. So what we now have with the GenAI, we can have this module and we can have the AI generate a description for this module. And while this description is generated, we are taking into account the the code flow and the dependencies that are between the COBOL modules here in this case. This is a COBOL example, and we also have, but it's the way how we are using GenAI is that we are language agnostic. Everything that we are capable to understand is also accessible for GenAI. So this is like the description automatically generated by GenAI while I was talking. We can save this button, save this description, and we can have a look at how this looks like from a code view perspective. So if we're going to the code now, we see that each individual paragraph, that's the granularity we're talking about. Each individual paragraph has been analyzed, and we have the description here. And what we can now do is we can review this. So we have a manual review process, and where a human intelligence can review the results from GenAI. And if someone changes the description here, we can recalculate the overall description. This is the example, like from a model perspective. We can have the same from like an endpoint perspective, from a screen perspective, or whatsoever. So this is like how we are doing autonomous code understanding. So what you see here is like the interactive fashion. So we are used to work on large code bases. So what we can do is, while we are ingesting the code base, we can run this in the background, have 20 million lines of code automatically analyzed and described by the GenAI. And so this the manual work will disappear in this case, and we will immediately see like the explained code here. Everything that I show you here in the demo is like the interactive one way, where you can change things that are not pleasant to you. The way for large code bases is the large scale ingestion. Once we have this understanding of the programs and so on, we can lift it to a higher level. So rather than, and this is what I meant with democratizing access to the source code, is I can now ask business-related questions and no longer like technical questions. So this is an application that processes credit cards, and so if I go here and say how is interest rate calculated, then it will come up with a description of how the interest rate is calculated by the AI. It gives you the appropriate code snippets where this calculation is done, and so on. But this is the business rate. You don't need to understand where the structures and records look like. It's a higher level one. The second aspect is we can go across multiple modules and have a flow described. For example, describe the login process as flowchart. And what we immediately get is a summarization of the login process, and we have also like a visual representation of what is of how the process looks like and how we need to understand and move on. Also here we see a textual representation and the references where things are actually happening. This is the way how non-technical users can interact with your code base and ask the question even on a higher level. Now let's go back to the interest calculation. So and this is something that was also in the Q&A. Does it make sense to reconstruct the business processes? Of course, yeah, that's the way how to go. Describe the interest calculation as user story, and this is where we now try to get the business actors out of it, how these are correlated to each other, and all taking those dependencies that we see with external systems, with interfaces into account. Also here, now we have a high-level description of a user story, and the funny thing here is that we have it also pulled out of a multiple sources. But now you see this little assistant wizard here where we can modernize this user story. So on the left-hand side, we see the legacy user story, and and we want to modernize this. And I do a simple modernization. I go here for just for 1400, and this is the way where we're now taking over. This is in a demo environment is where we show the approach. This is typically where the code whisperers, the IDEs, and so on come into play. One thing to mention is this is the user story is a first-class citizen in our knowledge graph. So we know what kind of operations are required to modernize the user stories and how the user story ties back to the legacy user story. What you also can see here is we can add technical requirements. So in this case, we want to get code generated in Java and using the Spring framework. If I click the button here, we are now seeing live how code is generated. Again, this is our own code generator based on plain LLMs. This is the point where you fit in your solution that you are using in your enterprise, like Code Whisperer, for example. Yeah, give me a second. It's live. Also, before we go further and while it's generating the source code, we have also Gen AI-based test capabilities. That's something I will show you afterwards. But now let's look here. So this is what we see here. We have here we see that the Java framework is used. We have the compute interest, and somewhere there should be the 1400. Yeah, it's here. So this is where the calculation is actually done. We also have like, so in this case, we can have services around example usage and test cases. But the more interesting aspect is if we can also derive acceptance criteria out of it. And these acceptance criteria are derived in order to generate test cases and in the good, so like the positive and the negative test cases. So once we have this acceptance criteria derived from the user story, we can hand this over to another product that Deloitte owns, which is a digital tester, and we can now create the test cases out of it, where we have like an understanding how you can do testing in a larger focus. So digital testers taking care of orchestrating those tests and also running these in dedicated environments. So again, it's live.
But while we are waiting on the answers and the results of the tool, there was a question about are the tools only to move off the mainframe, or can we modernize on the mainframe? As I mentioned in the beginning, the mainframe is just an enterprise server, and there's no reason not to use hybrid solutions or anything between staying on the mainframe and going completely into cloud. The answer, it depends on the objectives and what you want to accomplish. Stefan, back to you.
Yeah, back to me. Okay, thank you. So the test cases have been generated in the background. And what we see here is we have this acceptance criteria from above, and now we can see how those things have picked up, what needs to be done, what the accepted results look like. So in this case, only one scenario has been generated, but you get the point. So this is a very small application with only a few test case insights. It plays the full power if you have a large scale application where you can run this on a larger code base, where you have also lots of dependencies that can be pulled into Gen AI, and that can be then use retrieval augmented generation to really get the power out of large language models with the context information that we have from inner-wake mining, that we have from subject matter expertise, that we have from client documents that have been loaded previously, and much more. And that's the end of my demo.
Stefan, thank you so much for this demo. There's one question which directly relates to this, and the question is, who owns the source code of the generated source code? And the answer is it belongs to the client, because the client is using the source code. It's just like if you would have written it. So therefore, it is not that it stays completely our IP.
So there's a Deloitte primer available on our website, that talks exactly about these questions. It depends on your locality, where you are from, but this is really something that is out of the scope, I think, at the moment. But we also have the solutions to help you here.
Yeah. And Stefan, I see that you have used the car demo applications, which is still an open source, which anybody can use it. So
yeah, and so, but what I think what's very important, Stefan, is the products you're using, and then what you have demonstrated is something which we really use with clients today, with big car manufacturing globally, so meaning in Europe and in US, in the FSI industries, so for public clients. So throughout multiple projects, those products are in use, they are mature, and they are the clients are already appreciating the benefits of this combination of deep mainframe knowledge in the products, because they are, as I mentioned, already in use since over 20 years, and the combination of what Gen AI brings to the table. Is this something, Stefan, you would agree on?
Yeah. So also, I only showed a very small portion of our portfolio. We have lots of other assets that are Gen AI enabled, especially, for example, around database decomposition for monolithic databases, monolithic decomposition, and so on. This is definitely something you should engage with us to see more of it, based on the specific use cases. Also, the team is working on many other aspects moving forward, especially how to apply generative AI on the modernization space, and be a little bit patient and watch us what we have to offer in the near future. There was a question on regarding which LLMs has to be most effective on analyzing COBOL. The answer is none. So we are heavily pre-processing and making the COBOL languages easy to digest for large language models. That's the way how we are getting the most, the most efficient, the best quote unquote, whatever that means, answer out of the large language model.
I like one thing in your demo is about generating the test cases. That's a wonderful, like last 10, 15 years, the automation which we see in mainframe modernization space is more on the code migrations, code development, even in the data space too. Now, if we see today's world, when I see any mainframe modernization project, 60 to 70% time goes in a testing. Now, having a Gen AI capability to understand what is required to be tested, do you want to go a little deeper on that one, Stefan?
Yeah. So if we do a modernization, we have like two kinds of test cases. The one kind of test case is like testing the functional equivalence, and this is something that what we are doing highly automated for 20 years now. But we also now see that with Gen AI we can generate the missing test cases, based on the business processes. For example, if you have like and that's, I did not show this here. We can have documentation, process documentation loaded into mining, and then we can also provide test cases for those parts of the process where the regular source code does not have test cases for. So we can infer test cases. We can create new test cases. We even can create test case data out of the test cases to see whether or how a test case behaves in the corner cases. So yes, testing is a very important part of the application, and with Gen AI we can bring more accurate tests to it, because we can now test on different levels. And as I said, also from when we talk about going up from the implementation level to a business process level, also like moving the test cases from this lower level to a higher level.
Yeah, that's wonderful, because all these applications were developed like what, 40 years, 50 years back. We do not have an expertise, and most of the time, and we go to the customer, ask for the test cases, understand the business processes. They don't have any documentation. Most of these applications have like undocumented. There's not much information available to start with.
Stefan, go first.
So lacking documentation can also be a problem, like in the one-to-one case. Yeah. So if you go from one-to-one, from COBOL to Java, and you want to move this into bring this the knowledge to younger developers, not the COBOL developers, they are often complaining about lacking documentation in the one-to-one transformate code. This is also where GenAI can play a role, where you have GenAI adding the comments before the one-to-one transformation, so that they show up in the one-to-one world as well. Sorry, Björn, I was interrupting you.
No, you were not. I wanted to just summarize what you said. First of all, don't wait, start now, because there is a lot of experience there. There is the use of Gen AI, so just waiting doesn't make anything better. And I do get all the question about what are the biggest challenges the organizations are facing by migrating applications into AWS. And the true answer is the lack of knowledge on their side, the lack of maintainability, and the pressure which comes into this topic as long as they wait, because it's always, oh, there's the guy retiring, the last one standing. We hear all those conversations for such a long time now. And when we started into this webinar, I called out mainframes or mainframe applications were being declared dead, or at least this was the idea in the last century, and they are still there, which means, yes, they are important and they are there. They are the heart of the business. But now it's really the time, what we have told 20 years ago, when the baby boomers are going to retire. So that means the pressure is constantly increasing. So to wait on doing this work, which is hard work, which is not pressing the button, but which is accomplishing work which you can accomplish with a low-risk manner by leveraging all the tools and experience, is exactly what the recommendation would be to do so. And it's a win-win situation. It's the clients accomplish their goals, their objectives by starting this journey. AWS ARR, the annual run rate increases, and the costs go down. So it's more a win-win-win situation for clients, Deloitte and AWS. At least, Rajita, do you have a different perspective? Or?
Oh, no, well said. You covered it all. And I agree with you like 100%. And I think this would be a good spot for us to open it up for questions and answer some of the questions that came in through the chat. You think?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think we covered already a couple of them.
And there was one question on different platforms, right? I mean, we know that mainframe typically is IBM mainframe, the Z, but there are different kind of other mainframes too. Typically, you will see the modernization tools available for the Z, but there are different kind of mainframe like Fujitsu and other kind of mainframes. With the Gen AI, would it be able to help on those applications running on those different kind of mainframes, Stefan?
So to be honest, I had a hard time with Unisys 36-bit integers and how to move this to the open world. I don't know. So we managed it somehow, but I don't think that a Gen AI model will help us in bringing 36-bit into 32 bits or something like that. So we are talking. So this is really where the specialties come in, yeah. And this is where this technical understanding is required. And this is why we are heavily investing into making the languages digestible for Gen AI, but still for like the technical translations, like what do we do with IMS, what do we do with IDMS? This is something where we relying on our existing tools to come up with like the first round, and then have Gen AI on top of it to make it more pleasant to bring it in your world. So language translation, I would say, is easy, quote unquote. Technical migration, when the bits and bytes come in, this is not so easy for Gen AI.
And let me add one topic in this context, because based on the question about what challenges clients are facing, I think the biggest challenge is start. because it's always a question who has the biggest benefits of doing this. And the true answer is the business and the IT benefits. The business, because the agility increases, because the time to market goes down by optimizing the back-end processes and doing, honestly, all the housekeeping, which was not being done over the last decades. That's why we do find all of the different languages and different tools being used and so on. And on the other side, the IT, because the application becomes much more maintainable. It's much easier to just deploy another server and do a lot of things. And it's the amount of people being able to maintain those applications in the cloud are the amount's much higher than compared to the skills which are available for mainframe application. And therefore, it's really more about getting the stakeholders together, getting the journey started, and better earlier than later.
And I would add one aspect to the housekeeping. Add one aspect to the housekeeping. We also see lots of multiply implemented business capabilities from mergers and acquisitions. So get rid of your multiple implementation of the same process and bring it together into one holistic one. This is also where we really can make a big leap forward with a business-centered modernization.
Yeah. So beyond what I'm understanding is the customer does not need to wait till GenAI develop the use cases or the tools that develop more. Start the journey as soon as possible and use what is available today too.
And especially beyond, like, consider the case where, like, how many times we have got the customer who had like some kind of time bound restrictions, right? They need to get off the DC or they need to get off their contracts and things like that. So get on early, and then you have all the tools of AI also will be available to support you. So start and then don't wait, and that should be the takeaway.
Absolutely. And last but not least, based on what Vipin said, a lot of clients have already accomplished this journey. So you are not the first, maybe the first one in your special industry. Maybe you will identify a difference to the other projects. But the interesting part of all the apps running on the mainframe is that from a technology perspective, they are very comparable, which means look into the references. Has one of the clients being presented really accomplished those goals you are looking forward to accomplish? And was the source, the languages, the tools in use, all the other things beside the language, which the rest of the iceberg, to quote Stefan, is this really comparable to your challenge? Because this will help you to find the right partner to help you to make this journey as smooth and as painless as possible.
And I would say, if you have a customer, talk to Bjorn, and I'm sure Bjorn will talk about all the experiences which he has with all the customers with different geos, different industries, and help them to modernize.
Absolutely. And whenever someone out of the audience needs references, feel free to ping us, send us an email. More than happy to share all the success stories with you. And there are plenty in different industries globally for the different disposition options. So please don't be shy. Looking forward to hearing from you.
And I'm in the panel, but I think I have a question for Vipin. Based on all the experience that you have on the mainframe modernization, right? Why do you think testing is critical? And then what have you seen overall in customers? Some examples of like how that became a blocker for the planning.
So like earlier I said, right, there's not much of the automation which has been done in the past. But with the GenAI, like the Stefan shown in a demonstration, you can get more insight about the business logic inside the application. You understand it more. It can help you to create the test cases. Because today, testing has, if we go with effort-wise or the cost-wise, 60 to 70% goes in the testing. Having help from GenAI can speed up the testing part and reduce the cost. So that is why the testing is the important part, and that's how you can always validate whether the migrated code is a functional equivalent or not.
Yeah, but in this context, Vipin, you're absolutely right. testing will be easier. I would highlight that it will be more secure, so the risk will be reduced, because I heard this all of the time that clients want to reduce the cost. What I've experienced in the market is every migration into AWS from the mainframe reduced the cost. So it was not about really reducing the cost. The risk of not starting, all the other areas around the real project are which cost even more. So I'm absolutely in for optimizing the cost of this migration journey. But if it's about cost, it's just about starting and get to the platform which is where you can execute your apps in a cheaper way. At least that was the experience I've made so far.
Agree. Because eventually the customer is going to save a lot after they modernize and run it on AWS.
So Cody, I think I haven't seen any other questions. Maybe it's time to bring us home.
All right, absolutely. Bjorn, Stefan, Rajitha, and Vipin, thank you all so much for joining us today on Techstrong Learning. This last hour has absolutely flown by, and I know that there's a lot of things here that I'm taking away from this. So thank you so much for your time and your expertise today on Techstrong Learning.
Thank you. Thank you to have us. Yeah, thank you.
Always a pleasure.
So before I release everyone, just a couple of final closing notes. Today's session was recorded, and you will be receiving our recording via email here as soon as it becomes available. But you can also find it living on the Cloud Native Now website at cloudnativenow.com/webinars, and it will be in the on-demand section. I will be contacting 2 of our most engaged attendees to win a $50 Amazon gift card. So thank you so much for your chats and for your questions throughout our session today. If you haven't been so engaged, it's not too late. Just fill out our post-webinar survey, and I'm going to put that link in the chat for you right here. So feel free to click that. It's also in the handout section. I'd like to thank AWS for sponsoring our program today. And to everyone here, thank you so much for attending. We appreciate your time, and we hope to see you at a future Techstrong Learning Experience. Have a great rest of your day, and you may now disconnect. Thanks again to our panelists today.